It's time to nerd out about schools in the Knoxville area, specifically rankings of schools in the Knoxville area. So if you live in the Knoxville area and you're thinking it's about time for my kids to go to school, or if you're thinking about moving here and you want to know about the schools, like where should you go? What's the best place? You don't know. Then this video is 100% for you. Or you're a nerd and dork, all obsessed with schools like me. Then it's time to dive in and take a look. So I'm qualified to talk about this video, not only because I can read data and statistics, but because I am a former teacher, educator, instructional coach, district level STEM coordinator. I also managed an education grant, multi-million-dollar education grant. Anyways. And I am currently still licensed in the state of Tennessee as a high school secondary math educator. So I've got a little experience, a little knowledge about these things. And this is definitely an area that I love to talk about. Just ask my husband because he'll be like, Haley, please stop talking about schools. So that being said, let's dive in and take a look at some rankings of Knoxville area schools. All right. So if you love a good spreadsheet, welcome to my spreadsheet. This is a compilation of stats from, let's zoom into this so you can see. Stats gathered from primarily two sources, and I'm going to explain why those two sources. The first source that we're going to majorly lean on is called niche.com. I like how niche.com presents information. It is super concise. They also list where all their information came from, which reminds me, I need to open another window. So let me do that. So these stats come from two sources, primarily a website called niche.com. You can go to the niche.com website and see where their stats come from. But essentially, as far as how they ranked the schools, you can see what's weighted, how they weighted it, and then just in general, kind of where their sources were. So actually, if you go to their website and you click on their sources, it will take you to different education stats organizations, like kind of almost gatekeepers for educational data. So they're pulling from a lot of data sources. Now, that being said, some of this data is delayed. For example, like graduation rates, I think the latest date I got was like 2017. So kind of just bear that in mind. Some of these indicators are a little bit dated. So I just want to say that from the get-go. So this is not like real-time 2023 data, because let's be honest, sometimes our education system isn't really up to date. You know what I'm saying? Especially the data. Okay, so the other resource is Usnews and World Report, simply because this is a pretty highly regarded, especially with rankings of high schools, a highly regarded resource. And then in terms of, I'll show you later when we get to the rankings, like where they pull their data from. And I also will show you what their methodology is, like how they are weighting the high schools in comparison to how niche.com rates them. Okay, so the thing I want to first of all talk about is I'm going to be discussing with you the top 7 districts in the Knoxville area that niche.com names. Okay, so we're talking top 7. I'm doing that just because that's how they numbered them and they didn't name anybody else 8, 9, or 10. So we're going to do the top 7 and we're going to discuss those top 7, and then also what are home prices in those areas, how long are homes on the market, and then just some insights about the different districts and things to know. Okay, so first things first, when we talk about these top 7, we see here's the list: Maryville City, Alcoa City, Oak Ridge School District, Knox County Schools, Anderson County Schools, Lenore City Schools, and Loudoun County. Now here's something interesting. Maryville City and Alcoa City schools are both within Blount County. You can go check out my Blount County. I have a video about this, but Maryville City and Alcoa City are in Blount County. But Blount County also has its own school district. Maryville City and Alcoa City are pockets within Blount County. So I just want to point that out to you. Oak Ridge School District. Oak Ridge is part of Anderson, part of Roane County. Some students zoned for Oak Ridge School District live in Roane County, but within Oak Ridge. And some students live in Anderson County, but within Oak Ridge. So I just want to point out to you that Oak Ridge is technically a combination of Oak Ridge, the place, is technically a combination of Roane County and Anderson County. Knox County is giant. We're going to get to that. And then Anderson County, notice that Anderson and Oak Ridge are closely related because, again, Oak Ridge sits within Anderson County. Lenoir City Schools is similar to Maryville City and Alcoa City, and that Lenoir City is located within Loudoun County. So it's interesting because all these little pockets have some relation or are within one another. So I just think that's kind of interesting to think about. I also want to point out to you that when we talk about location, all of these, Maryville City, Alcoa City, Oak Ridge, Anderson, Lenoir City, and Loudoun are pretty much west of downtown Knoxville. So we don't see, for example, Jefferson City on here. We don't see Sevier County on this list. I just want to point that out to you as well. And then when we get actually into these rankings, for example, of high schools, we're going to also notice that a lot of them are west of town, which is why we hear a lot about West Knoxville. So anyways, just some side notes. The other thing I want to point out to you is there is one major outlier on this document. Can you see what it is? What is the outlier? Tell yourself out loud. If you said Knox County Schools is the outlier, yes, absolutely, we are thinking on the same. Now, you probably saw some other stat that you're like, no, Haley, this is what I see. So if I'm missing your stat, I would love for you to put a comment right now on the video and be like, well, I saw this outlier, because I would love to know what you have to say. Okay, so just want to point out that Knox County is literally, and I feel like I'm shouting. Okay, I don't know why I like to talk about this so much, but anyways, Knox County, I'm going to try to stop shouting. Okay. But I do have this handy dandy mic right here. Okay. My husband told me I can't speak. Anyways, okay. Knox County Schools is ginormo in comparison to the other districts listed on this spreadsheet, which makes it almost like, is this even real data? You know what I mean? Because it is so much larger. It's hard to really draw a comparison. Whereas like some of these are relatively, much similar in size. Alcoa City, Lenoir City, 2,500 to 2,000 students. We see that Anderson County, Maryville City Schools, similar in size. What's interesting about Anderson County versus Maryville City though, is look at how many schools Anderson County has. And look at how many schools Maryville City has. It's very interesting. Even though the student population is not that much different, although some people I think would tell you that they need another school, another high school. But those were Alcoa people talking, and Alcoa people and Maryville people have a big rivalry, especially when it comes to football. So anyways, just talking about Knox County schools, I want to address district size. This is a positive and a negative because Knox County is so large, it's huge. Think about that, 94 schools across the span of the entirety of Knox County. That is a diversity of population, a diversity of, just all kinds of things. And as a result, Knox County is more of like a self-perpetuating machine. Okay. There's a lot of systems in place. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of accountability happening with 60,000 students. Versus if you look at somewhere like even Maryville City or Alcoa City, who have much smaller populations of students in their school districts, there's just a lot more flexibility within the district. Think about Alcoa, for example. It's literally elementary, primary, I think it's intermediate, elementary, middle, and high. Like that's all she wrote. It may be actually like Maryville does. Maryville has like a primary, they call it a junior high. They have a junior high, they have a Coulter Grove intermediate, and then so they have elementary, intermediate, junior high, and then high school. And then Alcoa may have that as well. I don't actually know that for a fact, but I'm assuming with 4 schools, there's just those, right? So I say that because a smaller district has a lot more flexibility in what they can do and change year to year. Whereas Knox County is kind of more of what you would think of like a government entity, because it's so huge, right? To get change to happen, maybe for example, this year was the first year for 865 academies. Okay, so for example, Knox County this past year piloted a program for something called 865 academies. And this is starting in high schools. And then there are 8 or 9 schools in this past school year, the 2022-23 school year, that piloted a program. Well, I mean, that was 8 high schools. Well, no other district has even another high school. Anderson County might have 2 high schools, but like no other district has even that many schools to pilot a program with a grant. Okay, like it doesn't happen. So I'm just pointing that out because Knox County is more of like a system, a big machine, versus these other districts are smaller and more reflexive. For example, snow days. Oak Ridge schools rarely has snow days because I don't think they get covered with snow, and also it's just less people affected. Versus Knox County, if you think about it, you're talking about all the way from Farragut all the way to Coreyton Halls, and a lot of back roads that get covered in snow and a lot of main roads that don't. So the whole county might be out, even though maybe 50% of these 60,000 students can actually get to school, but the county shuts down, right? So I just want to point out to you that if you are worried about like a district being too big or whatever, not that I think Knox County is too big. I'm just telling you that when you're comparing Knox County to somewhere like a Maryville city or an Alcoa city or any of these others, it's a completely different beast. Now, are the kids still learning? Absolutely. It's just a whole other, bureaucracy going on, in my opinion. I have taught in both Oak Ridge schools and Knox County schools, and in my opinion, it's a very different feel. For example, in Oak Ridge, we would have at that time I taught 7th grade math when I worked in Oak Ridge, and all of the math teachers for the district got together, and there was like 8 of us for the district. Versus when you go to a professional development day for all the secondary math teachers in the district in Knox County, we could fill out a whole auditorium almost. Like, I remember us being where were we? In Carter. I think we met at Carter, and it was full of math teachers. And we've been to Fulton, and it's full of math teachers. So like the collaboration is different, but also the resources are different. Like when you have a 60,000 student school system versus a 4,700 person school system, the resources are different. Like there's more opportunity in terms of like supplies and whatever within Knox County, but more rigidity in curriculum versus in Oak Ridge. Maybe, I don't know, like Oak Ridge was actually pretty well outfitted when it came to like technology and all that. We had tons of resources, but the rigidity of the curriculum was not the same. Just because there had to be less standardization because there was less students to standardize, if that makes sense. So I think that the smaller districts tend to be a bit more flexible. Now, again, I don't think that's like a make or break deal. I don't necessarily know that that's a reason to choose a district or not, but I do just want to point out that it's a completely different animal altogether. Knox County versus everything else on this list. I put the free and reduced lunch numbers on here just so you could get an idea about kind of a socioeconomic status by district. And then also sometimes that will get a bad rap for like, the higher this number, the worse the, like student achievement. But like with Alcoa City, we don't necessarily see that. So anyways, just wanted to include this just for your own information, just for context. Obviously, Maryville City has the lowest of all of these based on numbers. And I don't think there's really a huge distinction between the rest of these, 20, I was actually thinking that this would be higher in Loudoun County, but it's not, because part of that is pretty rural. So anyways, it's kind of interesting. Teacher to student ratio, TNS, that's like, you know, whatever, teacher to student ratio. Interestingly, remember that this is across the entire district. So this is going to fluctuate by grade level. This also, especially at the high school level, is going to fluctuate by content area. When you get to the high school level and students start having electives, you might have a Latin class with 10 kiddos in it, and you might have a French class with 30. Okay, because more of the kids are like, I'm going to take French, not Latin. So, you know, this teacher to student ratio, you've got to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. I think national average is 16-1. So to me, I would be more concerned about this ratio at the school level. And then also when it comes to the elective level, because again, the larger the school, especially at the high school level, the more electives are going to be, because those classes can be filled out, and you're not putting a strain on teacher schedule, right? Because if you have, you know, we're going to see this later when we look at high school rankings, a school with 500 versus a school with 2,000. Well, a school with 2,000 students can carry more electives, because you have more students to fill out those classes, and you don't need as many teachers across a prep. So because you have more demand for a class, a teacher might be able to have 3 sections of French, for example, and not have 5 other classes that she has to teach. So anyways, just thinking about size of school as well when it comes to this teacher to student ratio, I think actually it's more important like size of the school and then elective opportunities. So that's just something to think about at the high school level for sure. I included this stat about finances, and I looked through niche.com. Again, this is still all niche.com data that we're looking at. I included this because I wanted just you to kind of see where are people, or where are the districts when it comes to spending. And we can see obviously all of them are primarily spending on instruction. So this is like teachers, materials, etc. Support. Now, again, this is my assumption, and these breakdowns may be a little bit different, but when you think of support, this is everything like school transportation, support staff, school safety, all of that stuff. So it's interesting to think too, because for example, Oak Ridge School District, they pay their teachers more than Knox County as an example, but also they don't have the same like security budget as Knox County Schools does. So just something to think about when I don't know that this is necessarily a huge deal, but I did just want to show you that there is some variance across districts on who's doing what. And again, I wish I could have found the exact breakdowns for these, but just wanted to include because I'm a data geek and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so look, I didn't go grab this. Let's go and see what is their graduation rate. Dun dun dun. I missed it. My little incomplete data here. Let's see. 96%. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so this is reading proficiency and math proficiency. Now, without getting on too much of a soapbox, which I kind of got on when I made my Alcoa video, my friend Wendy, who was there when I was making, was like, Haley, come on, no one cares. Okay, so you got to take these scores with a giant grain of salt, because first of all, there's a lot going on, okay, with these scores. And a lot of people are taking these as like, this is indicating something crazy or horrible about a district or a school. And I do not believe that, for several reasons. When you look at student like test taking stamina, student endurance, even to fill out, you know, the information about themselves, their name, their birthday, whatever that bubble sheet is. Right now, a lot of that comes pre-filled now. But even then, you know, you still do, you know, you probably read like 10 minutes worth of like instructions. So student stamina in general, there are studies about this idea that students who don't correctly fill out their bubble info sheet are not going to do well on the test. The student buy-in to do well is not there a lot of times. And when I say a lot of times, that's also a huge assumptive statement, but like to get from a whole school year to now when we're taking standardized testing, there's a lot that's happened there, right? And you see a lot of fall off a lot of times from like high elementary or at some point within middle school. So there's a lot going on, not just the test itself. Okay. So you don't even, and also even just little variances like who is proctoring the test, right? We are doing all this based on a standardized test, one data point in time. And I don't think it is a great indicator. Now, I do think that like here, this does hold true, this reading proficiency and math proficiency, these scores are super high. And then Maryville City Schools also has the lowest free and reduced lunch. Like, I don't think that's a coincidence. I'm just saying like, what's interesting though, is look at these proficiency scores versus this graduation rate. Like, hello, versus 55% reading proficiency at 55 and math proficiency at 58 with a 96% graduation rate, which is not even the highest. So I just want to say when you're looking at school data, let that not be the main indicator for whether or not this district is great or not for you, this is what I want to pull up where these rankings came from, because I think some of the stats that they provide are kind of interesting about. So if we look at, for example, how US News and World Report is ranking schools, college readiness. So this is about AP and IB exams, okay? And that's 30% ranking, okay? So US News and World Report is skewed towards this college readiness idea because AP and IB is about college readiness. IB stands for International Baccalaureate and AP is advanced placement. So like, that's where an AP class is where a student could get credit potentially towards a college test. State assessment proficiency, state assessment performance. So this is again about testing underserved student performance. So how are underserved students performing, college curriculum, and graduation rate. So these indicators are very heavy on academic performance as it relates to testing. Okay. So I just want to point that out versus if you look at niche.com, for example, their rankings of high schools, 60% is talking about academic grades, 12.5% is about culture and diversity. And this even includes based on racial and economic diversity and survey responses on school culture and diversity from students and parents, parent and student surveys on overall experience. And they're rating that 10%, and it's for people that directly responded to niche.com. So I don't know that that's necessarily hugely reliable, but they also include things like teachers, clubs and activities, resources and facilities, and food and sports. So to me, niche.com is a lot more robust than just looking strictly at like, here's our math proficiency, here's our graduation rate. And I don't want to seem overly political, but I do just want to say, like, let's wake up here a little bit. It's not just about these scores. And I also do want to point out that even if you're looking at scores right now, 2020, say you look at the 2023 school scores for Knox County schools. Well, what happened in 2020? Well, 2020 COVID happened, right? So there was no data for that year. Then 2020 to 2021, depending on where you were, some of those kids were at home for part of the year. Some of them were at school the whole time. Some of them were at school and at home part of the year. And they also missed basically an entire semester the year before. However, we still tested them in 2021. Well, then we had 2021, 2022, when that was kind of like back to normal. But again, what happened with the lag of information? So that was on teachers to kind of pick up the slack, right? But it's not like adjustments were made in curriculum or like more stuff had to be crammed when I think even too much stuff is already crammed into our standards. So I just want to just keep in mind, and I'm probably harping on this a little bit too much, and you may just be like, you know, like you're going to cancel me for all I'm saying right now, but I just think it's important to keep in mind that these scores are loaded information. Okay. So that being said, let's talk specifically about, actually, I'm going to come back to notes on grades. And we're going to look at, these are grades that niche.com gave, but anyways, we'll come back to that. Let's look at average salaries. Take a look at this. Maryville City, average teacher salary is highest by far of anyone. There is no stat that I found that told me the age of teachers in the district, but I do think that teachers in Maryville City are staying longer. We also see that teachers, the stat is teachers in the first or second year, 4.5%, which is the lowest. So that means we have teachers staying probably in the district for the long haul, which, you know, they're getting paid well. Also note Oak Ridge School District, they are, I don't want to say notorious because that sounds bad, but Oak Ridge is notorious, like where you go if you want to make more money, because it's almost like a $10,000 pay increase, like grade level to grade level. And like, obviously that's not exact math, but in my experience, that's what happened. So anyways, yeah, Oak Ridge, again, when you see this first and second year teacher situation, is that good or is it bad? I don't think that's necessarily bad. I think that, you know, first and second year teachers can get a bad rap. I think more of something to think about is vacancies within key highly tested subjects, like high stakes content areas, math, English for sure, and now science, like etc. But notoriously for a long time, math and English were your high stakes subjects. And sometimes you have a lot of vacancies within those areas, especially in the higher grades. So to me, that's a bigger problem than this like teachers in first or second year. Also, you can look at this one of 15 ways. For example, if only 4.5% of teachers in Maryville City School District are new teachers, that means they're getting a lot of support by a lot of veteran teachers because the other teachers have been there a lot longer. Versus if you look at somebody like a Knox County Schools, again, a much larger school district, well, with almost 15% of the teaching staff across the district, of the teaching faculty across the district, that means they're going to have a lot more robust support at the district level. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing by any means. I also think that you have to consider who are these first year and second year teachers. Some of these people are second or third career people that, you know, had a whole other life before now they're in the classroom, which is awesome for kids because that brings a whole level of depth and experience to the classroom versus straight out of college. You're like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to change the world. You got all this energy. You don't know what you're doing, but like, it's okay. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. I just think, you know, it is what it is. I do think that, it is interesting to think about what kind of support is then provided to these first and second year teachers. So it doesn't really matter, is it a first or second year teacher? What matters is what supports are in place for those people. And I also do know that like this stat is, especially for Knox County, fluctuates based on school, based on area, based on like school circumstance. So just kind of keep that in mind too. Like these are averages, of course, across the entire district. So I don't, you know, none of these are really like, you know, if this said 50%, then I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, like the teachers are getting out of there, right? But to me, this is not like anything on here is absolutely crazy. We're going to come back to this average sale price situation because that's talking about real estate, and we'll come back to these rankings. So let's just kind of quickly talk about the different districts themselves. So according to niche.com, again, this is our data. We'll start with Maryville Cities. Maryville City Schools is ranked as #1. Again, it is within Blount County. And I made a note, something that's interesting about their grades is that their diversity is their lowest grade at a C+. And so we can take a look at their student population and see kind of what's going on. I passed it. Here we go. So you can see like not very diverse at all, primarily white. And again, like East Tennessee, Knoxville area is not incredibly diverse. So, you know, that's also something to keep in mind. Now, Alcoa, if we check out Alcoa also has a grade of A. Overall, A's and B's. We know that Alcoa, as well as Maryville, are both highly regarded as places for student athletes. So this is talking about the #1 best place to teach in Knoxville, the most diverse district in the Knoxville area, the second best place for school athletes, and the second best school in the district. So again, that's according to niche.com. So that's a little bit about Alcoa schools. Both Maryville and Alcoa are highly ranked, as well as I believe Loudoun County when it comes to athletics. I will say that in the East Tennessee area, school athletics are a huge thing. So pretty much anywhere you go, anywhere your kiddo goes, there's going to be something popping with the school athletics in the Knoxville area. I wanted to see. Yeah, so they're saying that Maryville City School District is #1 for athletes in Knoxville. Let's see if we see anything notable about our #3 district, Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge, I think it had lower grades for resources and facilities. But I think actually that's probably because the schools are older. You walk in and you feel like you're walking into the 1970s. But although the high school is nice, like they've made a lot of updates and changes, and the high school is extremely nice. The middle schools feel drab, in my opinion. No offense, Oak Ridge, you know it's true. Again, this is saying #4 for athletes in the Knoxville area. So #2 in terms of diversity. So if we check out the diversity at Oak Ridge School District, we are seeing, let's see what it says. 68% white, 11.1% African American, about 10% Hispanic. So certainly more diverse than these others that we've seen so far. So some interesting things to note about Oak Ridge. And then #4, niche.com ranks Knox County schools a C in resources and facilities and a C+ in food. And I believe that C+ is very generous. Okay, because I've been through many of a school lunch line, and we've got work to do. You know what I mean? Just telling you, in my personal opinion, it could be better. So here's Knox County Schools grades overall. Resources and facilities, I actually don't know if I agree with that. I think Knox County has some dated looking schools, but I think that from a resource perspective, my experience is that is not necessarily the case. You can see like here's all the schools in Knox County. So I don't know about the resources and facilities. The C for food, I agree. #5, Anderson County. What did I note? C in resources and facilities, C+ in diversity. So I mean, kind of a similar grade to Knox County when it came to resources and facilities. And let's check about diversity. I can't believe that there's 19 schools in Anderson County. I guess because it's so spread out. Look how spread out this is. So from almost Halls all the way. I mean, that's a big, this is a big area. That's why there's so many schools. Notice that there's no schools over here by Frozen Head. Frozen Head is a really cool place to try. Random, not a part of this video, I'm just telling you. So 91% white in Anderson County. So certainly less diverse than certainly the other places that we've talked about. #6, Lenore City Schools. My notes here, mix of B's and C's. Let's see if there's anything there according to niche.com that's worth mentioning. Clubs and activities, sports, food, C-. And then resources and facilities. Interestingly, academics, diversity, college prep, administration, all with B's. Lenore City's district, I can imagine maybe clubs and activities just because it's a much smaller district with only 4 schools. I mean, I don't also think they have some huge rivalry like Alcoa and Maryville have. I think probably the clubs and activities just probably the teachers don't have a ton of bandwidth to also be sponsoring a bunch of clubs. That's my assumption. Fact check that. I will say C- on the food. I've not ever had a Lenore City School lunch, so I don't know about that. But I'm just like, ugh, Knox County's food is not great. Diversity, though, is actually pretty good. So 56% white, 38.4% Hispanic. So, you know, that's, I think, a good thing for the Lenore City's district. Okay, Loudoun County School District, number 7. When it came to ranking, we see some C's, A's, and B's. Overall, clubs and activities, probably a similar issue, although it's got almost double the students as Lenore City. I do think that it's interesting that you have, I'm thinking about the home prices I'm going to show you, but I do think that this is interesting. So a lower number on free and reduced price lunch than almost all others. So it goes Maryville first and then Loudoun County second lowest on free and reduced lunch. And then if you look at home prices, so here's our home prices. This is January through June 2023. Most expensive is Loudoun County. Now that is factoring in a ton of waterfront property, including Tellico Village, which is 55 and up. So community that is essentially luxury properties on the water. This also includes places like Tennessee National and Rarity Bay, all Loudoun County luxury waterfront communities. So just bear that in mind. But also this stays on market. So this is kind of an indication for how quickly homes are moving, how quickly homes are transacting, how long are they on the market before they go under contract. Alcoa, 17 days is the lowest. But they actually have a higher average sale price than Maryville. And I would have not thought that at all. When I was looking at these prices, I would have thought that Alcoa City was less than Maryville. But I'm wrong, 100%. I also thought that it's interesting that Lenore City is at 450. I would have thought it would be lower than Knox County. But again, it's interesting to think about what kind of real estate is in Lenore City. You got a mix of kind of new, old, everything in between. And you also have this pocket of Lenore City right on the edge of Farragut that is all new construction, really nice homes. So it's interesting to think about that as well. And then something else I thought was interesting is Oak Ridge is the second fastest selling. I think part of this is an inventory issue, meaning that there's not like a ton of trillion houses to buy in either Alcoa or Oak Ridge. But, you know, if you're thinking, okay, I want the best schools at the lowest price. Well, say you wanted that. I want the best schools at the lowest price. Well, that would put you in either Anderson County or Oak Ridge. So if you had a budget under 350, now it's going to be competitive because when we say average sale price, that's, you know, if we average it all in, then that's meaning that, you know, that's our average. So that's going to be a competitive price at a low inventory. So just kind of bear that in mind. But you also see that, well, 347, I could be in the number school, according to niche.com, school district in the Knoxville area. I'm just going to have to act fast. So, you know, just something interesting to think about when it comes to the real estate in the area. And if you're thinking about, you know, buying based on school district and you want to be in one of these top 7, you know, your cheapest option is going to be that Anderson County option. Okay, so I wanted to also show you some rankings within the districts because I wanted you to kind of see, okay, well, if, you know, Knox County is number 4, well, what about options within the district? So what you can see here is that every one of these had a top 10 high school, according to U.S. News and World Report, except for Loudoun County schools. So if we look at Knox County, just as an example, we see that L&N STEM Academy and Farragut rank 1 and 2. Remember that this score is based on more college readiness, right? When we looked at that, how they are scoring schools, these are primarily test-driven, standardized testing driven stats for the most part. So I just want you to keep that in mind as you're looking at these. But U.S. News and World Report ranks of the top 10, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 schools. 5 of the top 10 are within Knox County. So I want to just say that because, again, Knox County has more options, is my entire point of this. Whereas like Maryville City has 1 high school, and that high school is ranked 3rd overall out of 10, according to U.S. News and World Report. So you can see that like in Knox County, you've got 4 high schools that rank higher than Oak Ridge, according to U.S. News and World Report, right? So, you know, you might keep this in mind as you're thinking about like, what age is your kiddo, where you want to be going. If your kids are in high school and you're really concerned about, you know, college readiness and AP scores, then you may consider what AP load do they have? What are their AP options? How are their kids doing on AP tests? All that kind of stuff. If you're looking for, you know, more of more clubs and facilities, then you might choose somewhere like Knox County over one of these that didn't rank as high, right? So it just really depends on what you're looking for. But I also included this to show you, okay, so L&N is downtown. It is a magnet school, which means that you basically put your kid's name in a hat in a lottery. There's so many spots per high school, and you put your kid's name in the hat, not literally, but yeah, you fill out an application. It goes into a lottery. It's randomly pulled. So every high school has a certain amount of spots available that can be slotted to L&N. Now, siblings, if you have a sibling already in, say you have a student that's already at L&N, siblings can be grandfathered in automatically. I do not think, I'm trying to think if admin and teachers get to just have their kids go there. I don't think they do, but I don't remember. I can find that out. If you want to know that, just message me and I'll find out for you. Anyways, okay, so Farragut, this is my whole point in this. L&N is kind of its own animal. I taught there, actually. L&N STEM Academy, go Griffins. It's its own situation. Okay, so we're kind of just factoring that out. It is a STEM Academy. That is what its goal is. It is inquiry-based. It is all those things. But you can't really anchor it in area because it has students from every zoned high school in the county, okay? Now, Farragut, West High, Bearden, Hardin Valley. These are all West Knox schools. Now, West High is primarily 37919, 37909, a little bit of 37921, which is a little bit northwest of town. But Farragut, West High, Bearden, Hardin Valley are all West Knox schools, with Farragut, Bearden, and Hardin Valley being like West Knox schools. So I just want to point that out to you. West Knox gets all of this hype about schools, etc. Well, 3 of its high schools, 4 if you want to include West High in that, are within this top 10 ranking according to U.S. News and World Report. What you do not see in here is Carnes, and I think U.S. News and World Report had it ranked at like 14 or something, which Carnes is a West Knox school. So notice that these are all West Knox schools except L&N. So I just want to point that out to you. The rest of these, I mean, they speak for themselves. They are the only high school within that district. So anyways, notes on that. If we look at niche.com, so these are niche.com's rankings. And again, niche.com is a more holistic view of the school. So let's look again at what they are saying, how they are ranking. So for their middle schools, they're looking at academic grades, teacher grades, the district overall, culture and diversity, and parent survey. So this is a more holistic view, right, than what we saw from U.S. News and World Report. So I just want to point that out to you. Even if we look at the high school, grades. Again, we see clubs and activities, teacher grades, parent input on surveys, culture and diversity, which we do not see that at all on US News and Report. We don't see anything about sports grades, none of that stuff. So to me, these are just more, it's a more holistic view of what's going on. So even if we just compare US News and World Report versus niche.com, the grades are pretty similar. But what's interesting is, for example, niche.com has Farragut as 1 and LNN as 2. US News and World Report has LNN as 1 and Farragut as 2. Well, you know what? LNN doesn't have football. Their sports are like swimming. What else do they have? Track. I think they have a track, cross country. But it's not like there's no basketball team. There is no football team. There is a band, but it's not like marching band, which, you know, whatever. So I just think that's interesting when we're looking at, you know, this is solely really based on school scores, standardized results, versus this is more of a holistic view. I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I'm just saying, you know, you can see that there's a difference in like the holistic view of everything. Also notice that they have Alcoa High ranked a bit higher than what we see for US News and World Report. Anderson County, same spot. Lenore City does not show up on this list. And so the difference here we see is Career Magnet is actually ranked number 9. And Career Magnet is another magnet high school within Knox County. And that is where students graduate with an associate's degree in addition to their high school diploma, which I think is pretty cool. Again, it's a similar system to LNN where it's a lottery system. You put the name in the hat and so many spots exist per high school. So you have students from every zoned high school going to that school. If we look at elementary schools, again, Knox County, I want to point out to you, you got Sequoia, Bearden, Rocky Hill. Sequoia, Bearden, Rocky Hill are almost all West Knox, or well, Sequoia is across the street, not literally, but basically across from West High School. I consider this a West Knox school. Bearden, absolutely West Knox. Rocky Hill, absolutely West Knox. Shenandoah is in Fountain City, super highly regarded. And then elementaries 1, 2, 3, those are all Maryville City. Alcoa Elementary, I mean, these are like pretty straightforward. I do want to point out that when we get to the middle schools, we see that these are Jefferson Middle and Robertsville are Oak Ridge's 2 middle schools, and one's ranked 4, one's ranked 10. Just want to point that out to you. According to niche.com, this basically, Maryville City ranks everywhere in top 10 in every place. These are all of Maryville City's schools here on this list. So I just want to say that as well. North Middle, Loudoun County Middle School ranks within the top 10 as well. So just some interesting stats about schools in the Knoxville area. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you agree or disagree about proficiency rates. I just think we probably put way too much emphasis on school scores. I know it is an easy stat to look at and make a quick decision, but they don't tell the whole picture. So I just want to say that. And I also just want to say, when you look at teacher retention or teachers like first year or second year teachers percentages, I don't necessarily think that's a huge indicator. I think there's some other indicators that we could use more, such as like teacher absenteeism across schools. For students, I think we could look at like teacher retention, how long are teachers staying, you know, things like that, I think are a better indicator versus like percentage of first and second year teachers. Now, obviously, if 14% of teachers in Knox County are first or second year teachers, it's a higher turnover rate than Maryville, Alcoa, Oak Ridge, but I don't necessarily think it's a huge thing. I think we need to look a little bit deeper into what's going on school to school. And, you know, if there are, I just think we need to look a little deeper, right? Not just take it just exactly the stat for what we might assume. So anyways, that is a quick and dirty, long and awful, I don't know, review of niche.com's ranking of schools, top 7 schools in 2023 in the Knoxville area. So I would love to know your thoughts. I would love to get your input, and if there's stats or trends that jumped out to you, on this data set that we went over today. I would love to hear your thoughts. And as always, feel free to subscribe. If you want to talk about housing with me, give me a call, and I will see you on the next video.